Tonight in the studio we have Alex Cosper, founder of the website playlistresearch.com and former program director for the now defunct Sacramento radio station Quad. Alex is going to give us his views on the radio broadcasting industry, why Quad disappeared, and how we can use his website playlistresearch.com. I'm Joe G, and you're on the Joe G Spot. What did you start off by doing in Quad? What was your first job in Quad?
I got the gig through Sac State as an intern back in '84.
Okay.
I graduated from Sac State that year and just stayed with Quad and worked my way up. Within 6 months, I was on the air, and I was helping the music director, and I was the guy who planned out all the music for 4 years straight. And then in '88, they made me music director. That became my title, and I had more influence. Then they got rid of me in '89 because a new regime came in that didn't like how I sounded on the air because I didn't sound like an upbeat, crazy hypester, and that was the format back then.
You came back when? When was that?
91.
91?
Summer of 91, a few months after they had started playing alternative. They were still officially a top 40 station. The guy running it at the time named Jerry Cagle, he was a historic top 40 guy who knew everyone in the music industry and radio industry, and in his mind top 40 was all that really mattered. And in my mind, I hated top 40 by then because Milli Vanilli and all that ruined it, I thought.
You pretty much changed the way we listen to music here in the Valley, as far as I know, because you brought a lot of the alternative, and I hate using that word, but Seattle had just exploded with the whole scene, right?
Yeah, 91 is when Seattle was getting real big with that sound, and 91 was also the year Quad started playing some of that. Quad was, from 91 to 93, it was kind of still a bubblegum station, playing. Right. It even mixed in Madonna and Michael Jackson, and maybe not him, but Prince, Madonna, Taylor Dane. We were like playing all this stuff that was pissing off the alternative crowd. And I was like, why are we doing this? Like, they rehired me in 91, and we're playing Bryan Adams, Everything I Do It For You, whatever that ballad was called.
Yeah.
And so many people were calling up, why are you guys ruining this alternative thing with this pop crap, And I had no answer for them other than I was just doing what the boss said. And then he left in 93, and that's when I really took over and started, reshaping Quad. I was completely in charge of programming. The only person I had to answer to was Ed Stolz, the owner. And because he was tied up in a bunch of lawsuits that I guess he was losing case after case, but that was his thing. He loved, pursuing lawsuits, and so he let me he turned programming over to me for a couple years, and that was probably the best decision he ever made because I didn't want to do things like regular standard old radio that was, I think, becoming really boring at that time.
A lot of Sacramento scene as far as being in the music. I mean, you had bands like Cake, Deftones, you had bands like Far, Papa Roach.
All good examples.
All these bands that came out were influenced by that scene.
Yeah. I'd say Cake was the first one where we started playing a lot as far as local bands.
Yeah.
Because the Motorcade of Generosity came out around 93, I think, even though it's probably recorded way before that.
Yeah.
And I was impressed when I saw them at the Cattle Club, how the whole crowd was singing their songs.
Yeah.
I had not seen that ever happen with a local band before. I'm like, wow, these guys actually have a connection with a loyal following. We're going to play them. So we started playing almost every track off that album. From there, I started thinking, let's do more for the local scene. And so we got to where we were playing a local song every hour, even unsigned bands like Tattooed Love Dogs, or we did play Deftones at night. We didn't play hard music in the day.
Okay.
Because, office hours and all that.
Right.
It's just part of the,
part of the game.
Yeah, exactly. So,
so you were starting to put a little bit more of a local stuff. You had control of putting a little bit more of a local niche here and there, right?
I had control to the extent I could have put anything on the air I wanted.
What was one of the most challenging things that you had to go through as a program director coming from a station?
The most challenging things were doing actual live shows, and that's why I didn't really want to do them after a while, because those are such scams in the sense that they're set up to showcase music industry bands in exchange for airplay. So I didn't like that idea. I never liked the idea of compromising airplay for whatever reason. Everybody in the biz,
like a payola in a sense,
that's
right?
That's what it was.
You do one for the other.
Not just in a sense. That's what it
was, right?
Yeah, and it actually got cracked down on a few years back.
Do you think that's happening now still? Do you still
let's
see
put it this way. I mean, last time I was in radio was 2006, and that was in Palm Springs, and I had to deal with the music biz next door in L.A. And they pretty much it was a different world by then. They were telling me, no, we can't do this, we can't do that, because they had been busted in 2005 by Elliot Spitzer, the New York Attorney General, who had cracked down on the music and radio biz payola, in which each of the big corporations had to pay millions and millions of dollars in fines.
So Quad, you worked there through the 90s. You kind of helped build that station. Yeah. Then all of a sudden,
91 to 96.
96. Yeah. So all of a sudden, we heard Quad was like, I don't know. To me, the format just kind of changed there somewhere. I don't know what happened, but
it didn't really evolve.
Right.
In fact, when I was there, I had a very open-minded policy about. Everything should be considered, but what actually gets played should just be the cream of the crop as far as creativity and music that has some kind of message or point to it besides buy my record. I left in 96, and a big reason I resigned was because the industry was shifting at the time. A lot of alternative stations were caving into the corporate influence of what was happening on the charts. See, the whole thing about me was I thought the charts were supposed to reflect what we did as radio, not the other way around. We weren't supposed to follow the charts. That becomes a chicken versus the egg scenario. And, I don't know who came first, the chicken or the egg, but
right.
I know that when it comes to music, it's the station that comes first that picks the music. And then if that's popular, it makes the chart.
Of course.
That's what Top 40 is. That's all it is. Buy my record because it's, the story you can relate to. This is about a chick in a bar, grabbing her ass and going and having sex later on in a drunk, stupor. That's what Top 40's become. Formats, a lot of people are under the false impression, unfortunately, that radio reflects what people want.
That's right.
What it really reflects is not what people want. It reflects what advertisers want, because that's who funds radio. Without advertising, the station either disappears or gets bought out, or, it's got to do what advertisers want. Budweiser,
right?
One of the biggest advertisers on radio. Radio is not controlled by the public. It's basically controlled by consultants. And right now there's like 10 big radio firms, but really out of those there's 3 giants that run that control lots of stations. It's Clear Channel, Entercom, and CBS. They control
the biggest ones.
Yeah, those are the 3 companies that control Sacramento radio. And they each have consultants and VPs, backies somewhere that decide, not necessarily every song that gets played on the air, but the general direction of the format.
Where everything's going, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so, of course, they're dialed. All they care about is keeping the Budweiser sponsorship going.
Right.
And Budweiser, all they care about is getting a loan from Citigroup to keep the advertising going. And then you and I bail out Citigroup.
So pretty much, so Quad was already, Quad was coming at the end. You'd already left. You left Quad.
I left in '96, and Quad went corporate in 2003. That's when Ed lost the station.
Right.
But it's funny because he was always in the headlines for about 5 years straight about his case versus Intercom. And it was like this shouting match that was going on
back and forth
in the newspapers.
Yeah.
And it was hilarious because I knew all along Ed was not going to win because he had lost so many cases, and he basically has a way of shooting his mouth off when he shouldn't.
Right.
And he was saying too much stuff that I think he couldn't prove.
Playlist Research, is it .com? Is it
yes.
.com?
Yes.
Tell me about your site. Tell me about what it does. How'd you come up with it?
Mm-hmm. Playlist Research is kind of the anti-corporate version of an internet site that documents everything going on in radio, music, and new media. Say you're an indie artist and you click the word indie on my homepage, you'll get a list of what I call cool indie music of the 2010s. And so each link goes to either a stream or iTunes or whatever that I think is songs picked by me that I think are better than what I'm hearing on the radio. So I just started building the site by just adding as much information as I could about not just indie bands, but even radio stations. I mean, say like you want to find a station or you want to know what the stations are in Austin, Texas. Well, I got a page that lists all of them, and the site does get about 5,000 visitors a month.
That's what I was actually going to tell you, that your site actually gets more hits than a lot of radio stations here in Sacramento.
That's true.
Which is pretty cool. You know.
Well, I had a pretty big audience when I was on Quad. My listenership was like 100,000 people, and that was more than anyone else on the station. Although others like Sean and Jeff in the morning had higher ratings because
their show.
Well, because higher ratings doesn't mean bigger audience. It just means the combination of time spent listening and the number of people listening.
You go on there, it's very useful. I mean, if you're an indie artist, you can go on there. Anybody can go on there and check it out, right?
Yeah, it's not targeted at any specific demographic or career. It's some websites are just for the music biz, some are just for the radio biz, others are just for radio fans or music fans. Mine is all of that combined because I see it all as part of a bigger umbrella of pop culture. And even indie, to me, is part of pop culture.
Of course.
But it's becoming this other thing, like this indie pop culture that's an alternative to mainstream pop culture. I don't like that much stuff that came out the past 10 years, and it was pretty super corporate, the screamer formulas and all that. I got nothing against bands that, have lots of energy, but, what are they doing it for? Like, I liked Rage Against the Machine.
Yeah.
Because they had a message in their music. They weren't just screaming.
And I noticed that in a lot of music. There's really no more message, no more soul, any kind of passion, any kind of like drive to want to be an original, bring out something new.
It's just a copy of a copy of a copy.
Yeah. The vast majority of people who are using music or trying to make music are on the internet. If you're not on the internet now, I mean, I think radio is the last thing you're trying to do,
Yeah, right.
The internet is the only possible outlet now that you can have as an individual to put out any kind of...
As a direct pipeline to
any kind
audience.
of art, any kind of artist, anybody who wants. And that's the great thing about the internet. I do enjoy that you've been here, Alex. Thanks for coming in.
Sure,
I appreciate, I've known you just from Facebook. So this is actually the first time I met you come in.
Right.
And I'm happy that you came in and shared a little bit about yourself and what you did for Quad and what you did for music. Not a lot of people were doing that. A lot of hair bands were still dying off, still on the radio. And I hope...
Then Metallica cut their hair and then they fit in.
There might not be a lot of diversity in music as far as we know, but we don't know. We can't hear it. We don't have that. Radio's only going to stick to a format, so we can't hear all that different kind of music.
If it doesn't sound like Wasting My Time by Default. Or The Reason by Hoobastank, then it doesn't make the playlist.
It won't make the playlist, Alex, thanks for coming in. And go to your website, which is what?
Playlistresearch.com.
You can find Alex online. You can find him on Facebook too, right?
That's right.
And bother him. He's pretty smart, so I'd watch out. Don't get too savvy with him because he'll bite you.